Thank you all for coming. Welcome to Keeping It Simple, the next in the series of best practices in this room. We'll be talking about how we use mini workspaces, modularise our workspaces to make things simple and easier to maintain. I'm Tony, this is Baz. We're from Ordnance Survey in Southampton, England. So I'll just give you a little introduction to Ordnance Survey in case you don't know who we are. I guess Don and Dale would call us one of the oil refineries, or a data refinery if you like. So we're the data collectors. We're Great Britain's national mapping agency. The maps up there are just to explain what Great Britain is, because people tend to get a bit confused. At the top we've got the British Isles, which is Great Britain, which is England, Scotland and Wales, Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, Isle of Man and the Channel Islands. Great Britain is just Scotland, England and Wales. And we are the national mapping agency for Great Britain. Republic of Ireland is mapped by OS Ireland. Northern Ireland is mapped by Land and Property Services Agency of the North. Is that right? Sorry? They changed. It's now Land and Property Service. They might be going back to Ordnance Survey, Northern Ireland, though. I don't really know. That's us. And we started mapping the British Isles, actually. So we started mapping in the south of England in 1791, when we had our head offices in the Tower of London, of all places. Not anymore. But now we are just the National Mapping Agency for Great Britain. But as we started in 1791, obviously we have a great heritage of data collection of the visible landscape. And all our data collection was about producing maps. So it's cartographic data collection. And it builds on a vast history of mapping that goes back to Ptolemy and before. Arguably, I suppose, back towards prehistoric people and cave drawings of best places to go hunting and where the trees are and things. So maps have been around for a very, very long time, serving many, many different purposes. Royalty, rich people would commission maps and atlases as to reinforce their status. I think the biggest book in the world for a while was an atlas which was 8 feet tall. I don't think it was a hiking guide. You'd need quite a backpack, actually. You'd need a trolley, wouldn't you? Yes, anyway, I digress. On top of that, of course, maps were used to stake claims in territory. So if you were the first person to see a place, first person to map a place, you would claim that place for your country. We've got treasure maps, the start of many a wild goose chase. Maps also could propagate lies, not lies, what's the word? Fallacies. Falsitudes, things that weren't quite true. For example, the California was mapped as an island for quite some time. And then there's the infamous Mountains of Kong, a huge mountain range that stretched from west to east across the whole of Africa that was on maps for years and years and years, till somebody went to go and see them and found out they didn't actually exist. That's all cartographic stuff. Obviously, as we've been hearing already a lot today, everything is moving towards data, spatially referenced data. So it's not just what is there and how can we draw what is there, it's what do we know about what's there and how does it relate to other things that are nearby. What is the context of this space? What is the context of the things that I know exist in this space? So this is quite a big change for Ordnance Survey. No longer are we just collecting data to be able to reproduce the visible landscape. We're collecting data that can provide information to people based on what we have as our spatial reference. Those numbers, actually, they look a bit feeble and pathetic. That's not actually our full data. That's just a small area of Manchester where we collected those sorts of data as part of a Smart Cities initiative. So that is not everything that we have at Ordnance Survey. At Ordnance Survey, our vector database has got about 450 million features in it. And then on top of that, you've got addresses, you've got height and terrain, we've got imagery. We're now collecting all sorts of other types of data, third-party information. And it's all to support what people actually want from their spatial information. It's all to support how they can understand the environment, how can they react with the environment, how can they share information within the landscape. So for us, at Ordnance Survey, that means we need to change our core data structure, if you like. So we're changing our content to support this whole idea of transformation and customizing so that people can more easily link their data to other people's data that has a spatial reference. I think the key thing for us is that we want to be that spatial reference supplier. It's almost like we provide all the hooks for people to hang their information onto, join it all together. Customers come in, they pick the bits that they want, and it answers the questions that they want to ask, rather than just us giving them a map and saying, sort it out yourselves. So that means at the core of it, we've got Ordnance Survey spatial reference information, which will stay the same. But the user application is always going to be different. No user's the same. They all want to see that data in a different way applied to their own needs. So we're doing a lot of transformation within our data to try and create a structure that's maybe less relational than we're used to, maybe more sort of document-based, graph database-based, something like that. We're not really sure. We're in a state of flux at the moment, and a lot of people are using FME to try and help this transformation across. I think we've got about 50 people that I would say we use FME daily at work, and probably as many as 200 that are using it regularly or are exposed to it regularly, just as part of their daily business. The great thing about FME is it supports all sorts of different types of transformations. And this is where I start to come in with some warnings. I think Lars actually talked about this morning as well. The thing about FME, yes, as you can see, I like the grid to be on. I don't snap to the grid, though, because that's taking it a little bit too far, but I do like the organisation of the grid. And I say it's tales of temptation, because you look at that, you've got your great big blank canvas, and you've got this vast array, ever-increasing array of transformers. I noticed in the transformer booklet today, there was loads more. I thought, even more temptation. And why it's tempting is because you've got all those tools, that big blank canvas, and you just want to throw things at it and just build something up. It's like giving an artist a huge canvas and as many paints and crayons as they like and say, do something with those trees. And they will. And every artist will do something different. And that's the great thing about FME. It does support that freedom of expression. But don't get tempted to put too much stuff into one workspace. And I call this the seduction because you can make anything look tidy. That might be doing absolutely nothing, or it might be doing completely the wrong thing. But it looks really tidy, so you think, that's a really good workspace. You don't really know. And also, you could get tempted in the other way. Some people like to make things look complicated because then it looks like it's doing something really important. So you might get something like this. Man, crikey, now that must be really important. Look at all the things it's doing. My word. I've actually tidied that up. That's not the original one I had. I've tidied that up a bit. As you can see, what on earth are we supposed to make of that? What is it doing? Where does it start? Where does it finish? There's loops. We'll come on to that in a minute. When I look at that, it kind of reminds me of the London Underground map. If you look at the London Underground in reality, it's like that. So that's the geographical proper representation of the Underground. When Harry Beck decided to map it, he looked at that and thought, what's important there? It's the stations and the relationships between the stations. So it's the stations and the links between the stations. So he simplified that down to that. And now we all know that. That's the iconic London Underground map, which has now formed the basis of underground maps the world over. And all he's done there is simplified that complicated, let's not call it a workbench, what would you call that? A complex reality. He simplified it down to just what we need to know. And now I'm going to try and ask Baz. So I'm going to ask Baz to try and to explain what on earth that big workbench was trying to do.
All right then. I'm not as good at speaking as Tony, but so bear with me. But yeah, this workspace, at the start of it, it was taking a road network. So we've got ITN road network, it's our integrated transport network. We were trying to take that one. And this one is the detailed path network. So we've got another path network in all of our national parks. Another path network is the urban path network. So this is another path network, but this is in all the urban areas. So it was trying to take all these and combine them all together. So here you've got the ITN and the urban path and then we've got DPN. You can see overlaps some of the ITN, so we've got duplicates in the DPN, which wasn't good, so we have to remove all the duplicates. So that is the DPN and the ITN merged together, and then the UPN, so Urban Path Network, put on as well. So that big workspace was just trying to do all that in one massive, great big workspace. So certain ones in here, this bit you got a section that buffers features to intersect with other features and then identify duplicates. That appeared in the workspace about 3 or 4 times, which we thought was a bit crazy because they were just duplicating effort all over the place in the workbench. And then we had bits that weren't even connected when we received the workbench. So the person who put this together, not sure what he was doing. But when we got it, we had to go through it for about a week, trying to decide what on earth it was doing. Found lots of stuff like this. It just demonstrates the difficulty of maintaining a complex and poorly planned workspace. So again, we took these different ones. So this is the buffer one. So we realized that these are being duplicated. So we thought, right, let's actually take these and make them into one little component that does everything. So you've got your edit source, your reference source, it buffers the reference, compares it, gives you a result. Put that into one little component, store it to one side. So you've got your spatial buffer filter. And then we went through the workspace, and you've got lots of different other generic building blocks that we can use. Tony likes his coffee and pizza. So I'll pass you back on to Tony to talk about how these little generic building blocks will work.
Yes, so once we'd had a look at that big workspace, realised that there was building blocks within the workspace that we could extract and make separate workspaces out of those, it's really easy then to build up a whole workflow pipeline, if you like. And you'd orchestrate it in your own way. You might write stuff in Python or something like that. What I like to use DOS batch files because I'm old. But when you've got your components, you can write your DOS batch file, call FME from the command line, and you can just chain these things together. And the great thing is, if you need to change that building block, you need to change the way the buffer works. Either, if you've controlled it by parameters, you can just change the parameter and you're calling it, or if you actually need to change the way it works itself, you can go into that workspace, change it, and you don't need to test the whole thing. You just test that one little building block, say, that works, I know all the other ones work, I can just add that back into my workflow. So, that's what we did with that workbench, and it's now, I think it uses about 20 separate workspaces and also some SQL scripts as well, and a couple of other bits and bobs. But we split it down to the essential components and then chain them together as we need to. We don't need to use them all every time. So to spread the word for this kind of concept of keeping it simple around Ordnance Survey, we do all these things. We have workshops where we just take people through what I'm not explaining very well today. We take them through it, and hopefully I explain it better when we do it that way. Baz sets up a monthly FME challenge for our FME user base. It's not specifically to say you must do it this way, you must keep it simple, but we do give guidance about how to produce a workspace that is nice and easy to maintain, easy to share, easy to amend, etc. We encourage people to showcase their work, so if they've done a workspace that they're really pleased of, we want them to tell everybody else so that we can all share it. Hack days, we haven't done a lot of those yet, but I think that's a great way of spreading the word and sharing the goodwill, making sure everybody knows that you could share code. It's, you're not focused in, you're not blinkered, you're the only one that's ever going to use this. You need to know that this code is going to be used by other people throughout the business. Production handover, that's up there because it's always funny because we're basically prototypers and rapid application developers and that sort of thing. You hand it over to production, first thing they want to do is say, right, see what you're doing, I'll do it like this. So we always do our handover, we try and explain why we've done it in little modules. Just doing one great big one. No, you won't be able to maintain it. Every time you want to change something, you have to change the whole thing. Oh, production, eh? Who needs it? Style sheets and standards. Now, this is one that I'm not sure about. Lars mentioned it this morning as well. He was talking about, somebody asked a question about colouring in the transformers, and he was saying, don't don't colour it in too much. We're not artists. We are artists, really. You know, we've got freedom of expression in the Workbench and on the canvas. But at the same time, I can't decide about style sheets and standards and templates and that sort of thing. Do we want to be that prescriptive? Don't know. That's what I'm still thinking about. And then we'll just think of other things. 5 minutes. I could try and do this in 5 minutes. I was trying to think of it as something that's analogous to what I've been talking about, keeping it simple that isn't all about FME programming. So I thought, let's invent a thing, FME band bench, and I'm going to create a band space. So my band space is get the band back together. What do I need in my band? I need a guitarist. What does that guitarist need? He needs some equipment. What else do I need? I need a bassist, the cornerstone of a band, if you ask me. He needs some equipment, or she, obviously. A drummer with his kit, singer, yeah, their stuff. And then that all goes to our writer, our back line, where we sort of like set up all the amps and the mics, everything's all mic'd up, and that goes through to our mixing desk. And then that will supply the finished quality product out to whatever, recording studio, live audience, whatever you like. But what happens if our guitarist says, oh, I want a double neck guitar as well, and I want an acoustic guitar, and I want these extra effects pedals? Well, as we've got it all in the one band bench, effectively, we have to split up the band and then reform it once we've changed his transformers. Same thing if we had a rhythm guitarist, or if we went all prog and decided to get a choir in. Every time we do these changes, we have to change the whole thing. So we're splitting the band up and reforming. Well, let's go back to our modular approach. We've got building blocks. We've got musicians, we've got rigs, we've got backline, we've got a mixing desk. We can build whichever ones we want, test, audition individual ones, and then create a band. You can have multiple musicians, rigs, but yeah, suddenly everybody wants to be in a band. But because we've got our building blocks, we can sort of think of it in the same way as we have done with the code we were doing before. So we can have a batch file where we've got our individual musicians that are going to form the band. And if we need to change a musician, we just change that musician, audition him, make sure he's all right, and just put that into the batch file. Likewise with the mixers and backline and through to the delivery. Yeah, and so that's our band in a batch file. And I think the core of what we're saying here is keep it simple. If we did just break things down into little bits, bite-sized stuff, keep it simple, and we can all make beautiful music. Thank you, Vancouver. You've been amazing. Actually, we use subversion, so we do version control in tortoise subversion. Yeah, it works very well. This is the only one I've tried. There are other configuration management tools available.
Why individual workspaces and not like exported custom transformers?
Because then it's still all inside the one workspace. So every time you change something, you have to rerun the whole thing to test the whole thing. We'd like them to be separate so that you can test individual components.
Right.
Yeah?
But you can still put transformers in separate files.
Yeah.
FMX file?
But then do you not need to run the whole thing to make sure that that transformer is working within your workflow?
Oh, yeah. The only way you can usually get around that is some kind of test driver or something. So.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how that works either. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
But that's why you did it. Okay.
That is why we did it, yeah.
Okay.
Pleasure. Hello.
With, say, some of these sub-workspaces, if they error out in your batch file, how do you handle that? Or say if they hang, we kind of ran into some of that when we were having workspaces spawning other workspaces, but we were calling those from a batch file.
Yeah, I have the way the batch file works is it does check that things are finished, but now I've had this a few times, if one of the workspaces finishes, and it actually finishes but it's failed, you don't always know that it's failed, and then everything carries on, and everything thinks it's brilliant, and then you do get to the end and think, oh, that's not what I was expecting. So that's not something I've dealt with properly, shall we say. Yeah, if I get an error in the workspace, then, but it will wait for others to finish.
Yeah, I basically inside of like a visualbasic.net program that then calls the command line to do that, watches for the return code, gives it enough rope to hang itself. If it doesn't, it goes in, terminates the process, and then kind of bails from there.
Yeah.
So we're okay.
No, that's cool. That's, I think, you know, I haven't implemented it all properly yet, but yeah, need to put that sort of stuff in. Because a batch doesn't do it all by itself, does it? Hello.
Did you implement some kind of unit test to make sure that changing one block does not break the whole process? Because you said, of course, you want to block those to not to have to run the whole process every time. So how do you make sure that changes updated to one block that does not break the whole chain?
No, I know what you mean. I think because our the next piece in the block is expecting a specific sort of format of data, we have to make the test that we do is just to make sure that it produces data that will be expected by the next piece. That's how we do it, really. So I use staging tables in an Oracle database at the moment. Things will change, I expect, but that's the way I do it at the moment. It reads the data, it'll write to these staging tables, and if the staging tables are of the correct format, the next one can carry on. Okay?
Have you thought about using like custom transformers instead of spawning workspaces?
Yeah. We did. There was loads in that huge horror workspace. There was loads of custom transformers in there. I don't really like them too much because it kind of you're hiding transformers within a transformer sort of thing, aren't you? So you've got. I mean, although you've reduced the number of transformers in your main workspace, you've still got all those ones hidden in there that will need separate kind of testing. I just like the building blocks kind of separate. I think it's horses for courses, isn't it? Like I say, it's freedom of expression. I'm just trying to get everybody to do it my way.
You always test all the building blocks when you change versions.
Sorry?
Do you always test all building blocks that you build when you change or upgrade FME?
No. No. Well, you might have noticed in that batch file that I had, it was a path to an FME and an FME executable. So I make sure I use the same FME executable that those workspaces were written in. If we upgrade to the next version of FME and we want to rerun those same workspaces in new FME, then we will have to test everything. But that's the nature of the game, isn't it?
Any questions? All right, well, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.